It was obviously a very sad news for not only me personally, but obviously for Husky Nation and Kent State Nation and all the people that Don James, players, coaches, people that he touched over the years. And the awesome thing is he touched, thousands and thousands of people and made a difference in their lives. But so many things go through your mind when you lose somebody like that. He had a profound influence on my life from the time I was 18 years old to this day. I'm so honored and blessed that I was fortunate enough to be in his life and be a part of it, and learn so many things that I've learned over the years. And so my best to Carroll and his family, and obviously everybody at the University of Washington. And we lost a great man. You talk about lessons, we could talk here forever. I think that one of the things that's so important is I think I'm one of the few guys that has coached for and played for Coach James as a full-time coach, and so a little bit different situation. I can understand all the players that I coached when I was at Washington for 12 years. I was in the same program that they were in, and I think that's really what you think about Coach James. You think about his football program. He had a plan, a system in place, and he brought that into Kent State University when I was a sophomore, and Kent hadn't won forever there. And Don James comes in at Kent State University and brings that plan in there, that Don James plan. And before you know it, we win a championship a couple years later, and went to the first bowl game ever, Tangerine Bowl, 1972, and really obviously made a great mark on with me. And at that time, I wasn't sure what I was going to do. I was maybe trying to be a high school coach because of my influence. My high school coach had me, but when Coach James was there, it was such that it was for me. It was, hey, what about this college coaching? You mean I could coach, and they're going to pay me to coach football and coach kids? Are you kidding me? And so then I went and talked to him, and that's when I decided to get into coaching. And I was a graduate assistant with him, or a part-time assistant with him, 1 year out at Washington, and I worked for him 12 years. So what Don James did, he picked this program from Kent State University up, and he carried it out to Seattle, Washington, and placed it in there. And I think one of the reasons why he hired me as a part-time assistant for a year and then rehired me as a full-time assistant for 12 years is because I was much younger then, obviously, and I as a player went through the program, and I know it works, and I know why it works. I remember when I became the head coach at University of Toledo, and I left his office, and I was going to get on a plane and fly to the press conference. We had just run the Rose Bowl a couple months before, and I got hired at Toledo. And I went into his office, and I said, "Coach," I said, goodbye, thanks, and he was real nice to me and everything. And then I said, I started walking out, and I said, "Any words of wisdom?" And he said, "Yeah, I have a few words of wisdom." And I said, "Okay, Coach, what do you got for me?" And he said, "Gary, when things get tough," he said, "and they're going to really get tough. That's the way this business is. You wake up and you focus on doing your job. You get up in the morning, you do your job, and you focus every hour concentration, do your job, and you go to bed and you wake up and do it again. You don't let any outside influences get you," he said, "because if you do that in this business, it'll chew you up." And I walked out of the meeting, and honestly, I'm a young head coach, at that time, first year head coach, and I'm thinking, well, I was kind of expecting something a little bit different than that. Probably the greatest thing the thing that I passed on speaking to businesses about management and leadership, probably the thing I passed on more than anything. That was the greatest advice he could have ever given me. And I don't know that I'd have survived this business if he wouldn't have given me that. My first few years here, we were struggling, we're not winning. I was in Seattle golfing with him. And Coach James was up. I'm looking at Coach. I'm saying, "Coach, I'm doing everything right. Because I'm going through our program. The one you taught me. I'm doing everything right. We're doing this and this and this and this, and we're doing all the detailed things exactly like we're supposed to do. But I'm frustrated because it's just we're really we haven't turned a corner yet." And he didn't say anything, which would be typical. He's going to think about it. About 3 holes later, he's already hit the ball off the tee. And he looks around me and he says, "Hey, Gary, when you start getting more guys drafted, you'll start winning more football games." And that's what his way of saying, you can have all the organization, the detail in, but it's still about people. You got to have some players who can throw and catch and tackle. There are so many things. He was a man of tremendous integrity, and a man that had the most respect of any one person I've ever been around, from all the players and the coaches around the guy. Never yelled, got angry. He didn't have to. He just looked at you. and you know, his face told 1,000 words, and you could figure out the lyrics depending on what you did or how much trouble you were in. But you know, just a really remarkable guy.